Chapter 24. Burdens. Nighttime was beautiful on the ocean. The sky and the sea seemed to blend together in a single mass, with the water reflecting the twinkling stars above. It was a perfectly still night. So quiet and calm. The seamless expanse almost gave one the feeling of floating out in space. Squall sat just above his headboard, in the windowsill, staring out into that expanse. He could still hear people moving around in the dorms because lights out was still an hour or so away. But the darkness and the silence outside made Squall feel like he was in a bubble. He had almost worked everything out in his head. Almost. He would just have to do as he was told. Just like any other order. Command the garden. Kill the sorceress. Simple, easy directives, that just had some rather complicated implementation steps. That was all. Yet, how did the headmaster expect him to take care of everyone? That was a huge responsibility, and Squall could feel it pulling down on his shoulders like the weight of the world. Even if the headmaster and the staff were dealing with administrative issues, that still left him in charge of combat and deployment. Meaning he was also in charge of everyone's safety. He was in charge of determining if a battle had a reasonable chance of success. Then, of course, the battle plans that had to be made and performed to make that reasonable chance a reasonable certainty. All the lives he was now suddenly in charge of. All the hopes suddenly pinned on him. He had to make sure no one died. He had to make sure that no one was maimed or injured. All of this for a seed that was barely a full month removed from his exam. And he had just gotten a message through his PDA that told him that his seed rank had just risen dramatically. Now he could no longer claim that such a position wouldn't be appropriate for a seed that hadn't yet reached rank 20. No, that wasn't a concern at all. Because come to find out that the headmaster had just cheated the system and created a whole new seed rank just for Squall. He was now seed rank A. A thing that, before a couple minutes ago, didn't even exist. He had blown right past the roof of rank 30 and landed in a place that paid him an exorbitant amount of gil for his new responsibility. It would just be best to fight the sorceress soon and end this nonsense. He would just kill her, hand the title back in with the mission completed, and go back to his normal life. Of course. Wasn't she the headmaster's wife? Sid wanted Squall to kill his wife. What does it even feel like to give an order like that? Unbidden, Rinoa's face popped into his mind. And he couldn't help but imagine wondering what it would be like to order someone to. He couldn't even think it. Squall closed his eyes and rubbed his forehead. He wished he could junction Shiva and get her to cool him down, but he would rather not have her thoughts in his head too. It was already crammed enough in there with his own incessant ramblings. Whoa! Selfie admired as she came around the half-finished stage. When she had asked the FH technicians if they would build a performance area for her, she had been expecting like a raised platform with maybe some lights. She hadn't expected the artisan here to take her simple request and blow it completely out of the depthless water. The stage she had wanted was becoming a massive, show-stopping performance arena. It was built right on Mayor Dobe's front lawn, and the solar panels all around them were reflecting so brightly in the morning sun that it was blinding. At night, she was promised, when the stars were out, it would look like they were dancing through the solar system. The show she had planned was also snowballing. A small concert for those interested in the garden was now a massive show that people were treating like a global celebration. The students at the garden were pulling out formal wear and talking about dates. The people of FH were all chipping in so they could say they had a part while listening to the music. It all just meant that now Selfie had an even bigger reason not to fail this. So she had to do her utmost to make this the best concert that had ever been held in this area. Footsteps from behind her made her turn to see Irvine leading the others down through the panels. All but Squall. Their exalted leader had holed himself up in his room and refused to come out. When people would go to bother them, Renoa would ask them to leave him alone if it wasn't an emergency or time-sensitive. And when she couldn't be there, she usually had Angelo standing guard in her place, though the pup didn't look too thrilled about it. Squall seemed to be enjoying the self-imposed isolation. At least he was making no attempts to leave again. Well, what with the bomb the headmaster had dropped on him, Selfie couldn't really blame him for wanting some time for himself. The dorms were pretty much the only place that could promise such a thing. Selfie beamed as the others stopped. All except Irvine, he continued forward and gestured to Selfie grandly.
Everyone, here is our producer, Selfie.
Laughing at the theatrics, Selfie cleared her throat.
Thank you all for coming. As you no doubt know, the FH techs have estimated that the garden should be completely finished in approximately 3 days' time. That night, we are having a concert to celebrate the garden's completion and to thank FH for their hard work. This concert isn't just for us though. It's also for Squall. You know, to congratulate him on his recent, and much-deserved promotion.
Sounds fun, Quistis nodded.
So, who's gonna perform?
Zell asked eagerly.
We are,
Irvine grinned.
Yeah, right,
Zell snorted.
You're kidding,
Quistis stated simply. Then she looked between them and neither one seemed to be willing to give up the joke.
Oh, no way. You can count me out. I have no musical aptitude. Oh, really?
Renoa grinned. Something perfect Quistis the prodigy wasn't good at?
I gotta see this. Let's just give it a try,
Selfie said, grinning.
Seeds can do anything, right? And you only need to learn a handful of songs. It's not like I'm asking you to master the instrument.
Quistis sighed and Zell made a face.
Yeah, I don't know of any mission before that's required musical skills. Well, first time for everything. The stage is almost finished, the evening is all planned. All we need is 4 people. This is gonna be fun,
Renoa laughed. Those music classes she had taken as a child weren't going to go to waste after all. Selfie looked at her apologetically.
Oh, sorry, Renoa. But you're not gonna be in the band.
Renoa's face fell, genuinely hurt.
You're leaving me out.
Selfie grinned at her, shaking her head.
We have something more important for you to do. That sounds like something you would say to appease someone being left out,
Renoa frowned.
So, wait,
Zell looked between them.
What are we supposed to do? I mean, basically, we're all amateurs, right? Even if you hand us instruments, we won't be able to do anything. We have 3 days to practice,
Selfie pointed out.
Irvi and I already know how to play an instrument, so we're all set. Irvi.
Quistis repeated.
So that just leaves you 2. This is totally doable. And exactly how is this doable?
Quistis asked dryly.
First, I wanna ask you guys something,
she grinned.
Okay, you know I took over this event after I transferred to Balam, right? Well, I have the composition that the last producer recommended to me. But everything got all messed up after the garden started moving. There's supposed to be only 4 scores to go with the composition, but I got 8 scores here. So?
Zell shrugged.
What does that mean? It's pretty simple,
Irvine smiled.
4 other scores from a different composition got mixed up with the 4 scores that Selfie had. So we just have to find the 4 original scores to perform the composition that Selfie wants. Only way to find them is to play all 8 scores and see. Why wasn't the music labeled?
Reno frowned. Selfie ignored her.
And we still need to decide instruments. Irvi and I already know what we're playing, pretty much. So we just have to find something for you guys. So you're each going to pick up an instrument and try to start playing it? Irvi knows the song really well, so he can tell you which song is right or not. So let's get started,
Irvine grinned.
Wait, what are you two playing?
Quistis asked, backing up a little as Renoa took a seat in front of the stage on top of the instrument cases that had been laid out.
I play guitar,
Selfie declared, beaming.
What about you, Irvine?
Renoa asked.
Well, originally I played the fiddle. Handy, since the song requires a violin. Is that the same thing?
Quistis asked, frowning in confusion.
Oh, yeah. They're pretty much the same instrument. They only really differ in what musical styles they play. It's not a problem. Now stop stalling. Quistis, pick up that bass and Zell go for the sax. Let's make some magic.
Something was made. Renoa didn't know if she'd call it magic. It certainly wasn't music. The weird noises that Quistis managed to coax from the bass had probably never been heard in the history of the world outside of maybe some weird monster mating calls. Zell straight up broke the sax. Which made Selfie cry. Which made Irvine angry. Which turned into a shouting match that only ended when Quistis nearly threw the bass in frustration.
Okay, let's not lose our heads,
Irvine tried to calm down.
Let's try something else. Zell, here. Can I trust you with this one? I'm going to go with no. What is that, a toothpick? It is quite obviously a flute, you barbarian,
Irvine rolled his eyes. Zell looked more than a little silly trying to figure out the flute. His strong, big, calloused hands wrapped around the tiny, thin metal instrument was comical in a way. He handled it like it was made of glass. And, for his grip strength, it might as well have been. But Selfie beamed when she saw that he knew how to place his lips correctly on the mouthpiece on the first try. He didn't know how to move his fingers, or even where to put his fingers, but he had accomplished the hardest part to teach. While Selfie instructed him on that, Irvine continued trying to find an instrument for Quistis to struggle her way through. He tried a guitar, the piano, he even gave her his violin. She broke the strings on the guitar, couldn't work out the piano, and nearly broke the violin. She only managed to avoid doing so by Irvine jerking it from her grasp before she had a chance.
Man, you're really not musically inclined, are you?
He asked, frowning at her efforts.
I told you,
Quistis groaned, exasperated as Renoa laughed. Grumbling about her being difficult, Irvine moved back over to the instrument pile. He gently set his violin down before working through the others.
I don't know why she won't just allow someone else to play,
Quistis sighed, standing next to Renoa.
Well, I think she just wants all of us to be involved,
she said, grinning.
It's kind of fun, don't you think?
Quistis grinned reluctantly.
Yeah, it kind of is. I'm starting to feel bad about it. Irvine's getting annoyed and I can't really contribute. Contribute to what?
The two of them jumped at Shu's question. The girl was walking towards them completely silently.
When did you get there?
Rinoa asked, grabbing for her heart.
Quistis asked me to come,
she smiled.
I didn't tell you to scare us to death,
Quistis sighed.
Thanks anyway. So? What did you need? Just so you know, I'm not playing an instrument. Don't ask. No, that's not it,
Quistis assured her.
Rinoa needs your help. Oh? What's up? Well, it's about the concert. I've been given a bit of a different job. And I don't really have the things I need to do it. And we don't have time to help her get them,
Quistis shrugged.
Not if we're going to be able to play all the songs in time for the concert. Hey, Quistis.
Irvine came over, something in his hands.
I get it. You can't play anything. So, new question, can you dance? Dance?
Quistis frowned.
Well, yeah, I guess, but... Here.
Irvine pushed a pair of shoes in her face and Quistis frowned. She took them and frowned at the piece of metal at the bottom that clinked softly when she did so.
What's this? They're tap shoes. No musical talent needed. You want me to tap?
Quistis frowned.
Yes. Put them on and move around a bit. I think I might be able to adjust the bass line to suit the tap sound. It's better than not having one at all. Okay.
Quistis frowned as she sat next to Rinoa and reached for her boots.
So, what exactly did you need from me?
Sue asked, frowning. Rinoa stood and moved over to her.
Well, actually, it's a bit of a big favor. The train tracks here lead right to the Galbadian continent. It actually puts you out right near Timber. Yeah, so. Well, I need some of my stuff from the old Rebel base train. Stuff?
Shu's eyebrow raised.
Yeah. I told them that I didn't really have to do it, but they insisted. So, I was wondering if you could escort me down to Timber to get them. Why don't you just ask Squall? Because we want it to be a surprise.
Selfie declared, coming up to them with a smile.
Please, Sue. I really want Squall to not see it coming. And if Rinoa goes with him, he'll figure it out.
Sue sighed.
Alright, fine. I'll do it, but you owe me. Yay.
Selfie jumped up and down as Quistis got to her feet. She frowned at the way the tap shoes clicked under her. They wore differently than other shoes. It felt kind of awkward wearing them.
Great.
Irvine smiled.
Now jig around a bit. I want to hear you rock it.
Tap. Quistis frowned. Then sighed. Tap. Tap. Tap, tap, tap. She was much better at moving than she was at playing. While it wasn't exactly polished, she was actually making musically related sounds. It was as close as she had gotten thus far.
Okay. Done.
Irvine let out a long breath of relief.
I am not pressing it and letting you break anything else. Go practice with Selfie. I have to rewrite your part of the piece.
Rinoa laughed, Sue shook her head.
Hey, Quistis,
she said, jerking her head to the side.
Can I talk to you a minute?
Sure. Walking awkwardly due to the plates on her toes and heels, Quistis followed Sue to stand a little ways away from the others. Rinoa watched them go before turning back to her friends. It was fun watching them practice. She was almost sad that she had to miss out on it. Almost. She couldn't deny that the job Selfie had picked for her was indeed a little more important. And, she thought with a smile, she wouldn't mind doing it. In a few minutes, Quistis and Sue came back.
Ready to go, Rinoa?
Sue asked.
Yeah.
She got to her feet and frowned.
Quistis? You okay? Hey, oh, yeah. Of course. Why do you ask?
Because your face looks like Squall's flame saber, Rinoa thought, raising an eyebrow at Quistis's cheeks. She looked over to Sue, who was carefully looking away, and she grinned.
Oh, okay. And no.
Quistis held up her hands.
It's not what you think. I didn't say anything,
Rinoa laughed.
The others are waiting. You want to leave now, Sue? Yeah, might as well. See you around, Quistis. Remember what I said?
Quistis said something noncommittal in the back of her throat. Sue smiled at her as she and Rinoa started back up through the solar panels. Quistis had to let out a long breath as she looked over Sue. She didn't intend to be caught, but Sue looked back and smirked. Quistis turned away quickly, trying to calm her heartbeat. One drunken night and you just couldn't escape it. If she even wanted to escape it. Three days later, the garden was a little too quiet. It wasn't until all the work on the engines had stopped that Squall realized just how accustomed he had become to the loud sounds echoing up from the very bowels of the garden. It was also the lack of the sound that made him realize just how long he had been shutting himself up in his room. He berated himself as he got dressed as night started to fall. He was acting like a child instead of the leader that he had been ordered to become. It wasn't so bad as all that. He just had to do as he was told and get it all over with. It was just like being a squad leader. With a really big squad. Wondering what the others were doing, feeling pretty bored, he stepped out of his room. And almost right on Angelo's tail.
Whoa,
he stepped back quickly. The dog, hearing the door open, turned back. He growled low. It almost sounded like he was grumbling in protest.
What are you doing out here?
Squall asked. Angelo gave a little bark that almost sounded like a cough before standing up and walking away. For lack of anything better to do, Squall followed him. It was sunset about now. Lights out wasn't for a few hours. Where was everybody? Squall walked out of the dorms and into the hallway. Zell and Quistis were there talking to someone who had their back turned to him. Quistis whispered something and Zell gave the person a thumbs up before the two of them turned and ran off back into the garden proper. Then the person they were talking to turned. Squall felt like his own memories were coming back to hit him in the face. That same dress, like someone had dripped her in cream, was draped over Rinoa's body. When she turned, her hair flipped around her face before settling down just behind her shoulders. Rinoa had put more effort into dressing tonight than she had at the seed ball. She wasn't just using the party as an excuse to meet the headmaster this time. Now she had a genuine reason to dress up, and she had gone all out with it. She had done something to her face. She had put on some kind of makeup that looked like magic on her cheeks and eyes. It highlighted her already stunning brown eyes and emphasized the sweet pink of her lips. The sheer chiffon over the skirt of her dress swished about her thighs, caressing the creamy skin there temptingly. As Squall came in closer, he could detect the subtle scent of her perfume again. He hadn't gotten to experience it since Timber, and he didn't realize until he caught whiff of it again just how much he had missed it. She smelled like flowers and dreams. An enchanting mix of blossoms that was somehow familiar and still exciting. She turned on her heels, grinning at him from a higher perspective than usual.
"Hey," she waved at him. "What's up?"
"Tired."
"You look so down,"
Rinoa frowned, stepping in closer when he did not.
"Come on, Squall, how old are you? You're still a teenager, right? Why don't you act like one for a change?"
He was just tired.
"Come on."
Rinoa reached out and snagged his hand.
"Let's go to the concert." "Concert?"
He frowned.
"What concert?" "Selfie's concert, of course. Everyone's going."
Well, that at least explained where all the people were. But
"Does that count as the third date?"
he asked, his eyebrow raising. Rinoa laughed.
"We'll call this one a continuation of the first date, since it had been so rudely interrupted. Besides, you're going to ask me on the third date, remember?"
"Sorry," Squall shook his head.
"I'm really not in the mood."
Rinoa frowned.
"How come?" "I'd rather not talk about it."
Rinoa started laughing and he frowned.
"Quistis was right. You're so predictable."
Squall gave her a look and she smiled, laying her head against his arm.
"Okay, I'm sorry. I can understand why you wouldn't be in the mood. You're probably still thinking about what the headmaster did. He put a lot on your shoulders. It all happened so fast. So we thought it'd be good for you to come and unwind a little. Plus, I have something important that I want to talk to you about." "Who's we?"
Squall frowned.
"Who else? Quistis, Selfie, Zell, Irvine, and, of course, me."
She smiled up at him, but he didn't look all that enthused. It almost looked like he would rather return to his room and not leave until he was forced to by his duty.
"Please,"
Rinoa squeezed onto his arm tighter, pressing her breasts against his skin. She probably didn't even realize she was doing it. Squall did.
"For me? There's no point if you don't show up."
Damn. 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 Hein, when did he become so weak? She was practically leading him around by the hand and he was still letting her. How could one person smile at him so sweetly like that and make him want to move the world for her? Oh, well. A little music never hurt anyone. And it's not like he was having any better of a time in his room.
"Why not?"
he finally said.
"Yes."
Rinoa laughed, hugging his arm tight before stepping back. He thought she was going to walk beside him normally, but she reached down and took hold of his hand instead. He was wearing his gloves, but it still felt so intimate to do so. She pulled on him with a grin.
"Okay, let's go. We don't want to miss it."
Squall wasn't dressed up, and Rinoa didn't want to let him go back to his room to change into something formal. Mostly because she felt like the only thing he would have would be his seed uniform, and she didn't want to give him reminders of duty tonight. Besides, he could rock leather better than anyone else anyway. The air was kind of cool out tonight. The temperature dropped surprisingly low out here in the middle of the ocean. Rinoa almost shivered as she followed Squall across the bridge to FH. She stood close to him as they rode down the lift, grateful he had decided to forego Shiva tonight. As they approached the entrance to the solar panel bowl, they caught sight of some of the garden girls milling about, talking and laughing. Irvine was there, standing behind Selfie. He turned as they came towards them and grinned.
So she convinced you, eh?
He grinned at Squall.
Well, with a babe like that, who wouldn't be convinced?
Squall's eyebrow raised, not sure he liked Rinoa being referred to as a babe. He didn't get a chance to voice his complaint. Irvine indicated his head off to the side and Squall followed him just out of earshot of the girls.
Looking good together,
he whispered, nudging Squall lightly in the chest.
Really? Do you guys have nothing better to do? Nope. Not at all. Is this your first date? I bet you're nervous, hey? Don't be. Want me to check your breath? I'm here for you, man. Irvine. Just stop.
He chuckled.
So, I found this place. It's perfect for you guys to have a little privacy. Away from the crowd.
Squall groaned, rolling his eyes up.
It's by the stage, a little off the path, but you really can't miss it. I left an old magazine of mine there. You can thank me later. Have fun. Just let it all out tonight. And I do mean all. That girl back there is practically dripping in anticipation. Just give her a good one, too, and take her downtown. If you know what I mean. I don't. I don't want to. Please. Stop.
Irvine grinned at him.
Squall, did you ever get the bird and the bees talk? Is that part of the curriculum here? See, what happens is, when a mommy chocobo and a daddy chocobo love each other very much. Irvine. I am going to stab you.
He laughed and hit him on the shoulder.
You'll do fine. Probably. Pro tip, don't go for the butt first. They hate that. You have to work your way up there. Are you finished?
Squall's voice was frosty. It went right over Irvine's head.
I might be there later with a special someone, myself. Wish me luck.
With a wink, Irvine turned and walked back towards Selfie. Rinoa watched him go and stepped back to Squall's side.
So? What did you talk about? Man business. He told me not to grope your butt first and that you were dripping ready for me to take you downtown,
Squall said, totally deadpan and without mercy. Rinoa's face turned beet red as she squeaked in surprise. She looked over to see Irvine grinning at Selfie's backside that was nearly in his face at the height she was standing. Rinoa looked back at Squall with wide eyes.
Can you hurt him for me? Please give me the order,
Squall begged. He turned back, figuring he might as well get this over with. Rinoa still wanted to talk to him. Even if Irvine was a pig. Squall walked up behind him just as Irvine was lifting his arm to put it around Selfie's waist from behind. Squall loudly and deliberately coughed. Selfie turned. Irvine jumped and hid his hand behind his back.
What's up?
Selfie asked sweetly.
Oh, nothing. Think I inhaled a bit of rust.
Squall said, indicating to the air around him. Selfie smiled and turned to run down to the stage. Irvine glared.
Come on, man. I was about to make my move. Oh, well.
Squall said calmly as Rinoa laughed behind him.
Geez, thanks a lot.
Irvine rolled his eyes before going after her. Rinoa continued to laugh and Squall sent her a grin.
Feel any better?
He asked.
Slightly. Though I'm still thinking a quick stab is in order. Nothing vital, just to make a point. I am at your command,
Squall reminded her. She laughed as she reached up to take his hand in hers again. The two of them walked down together towards the stage. Going deeper into the bowl though, Rinoa shivered. The breeze was somehow colder down here.
What's wrong?
Squall asked.
Just a little chilly,
Rinoa grinned.
It's okay. I like the cold.
Squall released her hand and she opened her mouth to protest. Then he slipped his jacket from his shoulders and held it out for her.
Here. What? I can't take that,
she said, surprised at the move.
I like the cold. I'm used to it. And I'm also wearing pants. Here.
Rinoa smiled and thanked him as she reached for the soft fur-lined leather jacket. It was like she was putting his seed jacket on again, but better. His scent had fully absorbed into the comfortable leather of this jacket. It felt almost like he had his arms around her when she put it on. And since Shiva wasn't making him cold, it contained his residual body head. Rinoa smiled into the fur of the collar as she reached down to take Squall's hand again. Her cheeks were tinged pink as he deliberately looked away. Hein, but she looked so good in his clothes. And that dress she was wearing was almost the same creamy color of her skin, giving the illusion that she wore nothing else under his jacket. Damn, tonight was not the night to leave Shiva behind. The FH technicians had built a grand, multi-leveled stage that would probably be more suited to a big city venue than this place in the center of the bowl. Squall raised an eyebrow, actually impressed at the craftsmanship. Added to that, Selfie had gone all out when she had decorated. You couldn't even see the mayor's house anymore behind everything. Brightly colored lights of many colors pierced the sky. People were milling about, talking, laughing and having fun. Someone had brought out a food cart and was making a load of gill beside the guy selling drinks. More than just Rinoa had dressed up. Seeds and cadets got so few opportunities to do so, making even a small concert like this was a big event. Near the stage, the guitar guy from the quad was entertaining a few people as Selfie and the others got set up on stage.
Elaborate,
Squall said, looking around. He was not the only one to not dress up either. So there was an assortment of plain clothes, uniforms, and dress clothes mixed with FH citizens that had dusted off their best garb, all intermingling together. Instead of appearing messy, it all just looked like it had fallen together rather naturally.
You seeds really know how to party,
Rinoa agreed, chuckling.
Where did you get that dress?
Squall asked. She hadn't brought it with them when they had escaped Timber. He would have noticed her carrying a suitcase.
Sue and I went down the tracks to get it,
she grinned, smoothing down the front.
Do you like it? It's fine,
Squall shrugged. He looked down when she punched his chest. It hadn't hurt, but she was pouting.
What? You said that word again. I didn't say I'm fine. It counts.
He sighed and looked away. He didn't want to try to say anything else about it. Everything in his head was either sappy, corny, or probably qualified as sexual harassment. Rinoa smiled at the way he was looking up and away from her. Trying to hide the way his cheeks were getting just a bit red. The big, bad mercenary leader was shy. It was cute and she didn't care if he didn't like the label. Smiling, she leaned her head against his shoulder again.
It's okay. That will do. For now.
They fell silent as the others finished setting up and Selfie motioned for the guitar guy to stop. Then she beamed at the gathered crowd.
Booyaka!
She yelled into the mic to catch everyone's attention. Laughing, she waved at everyone, an acoustic guitar hanging from a strap on her shoulder.
Hey, everyone! Thanks for coming out. Let's give it up to the fine people of FH for our beautiful stage and this wonderful night.
A loud cheer went up and Selfie nodded enthusiastically. When it died down, she started again.
We're here to celebrate the garden's completion and to thank FH for such a job well done. However, we're also here to celebrate our new leader.
Squall groaned, making Rinoa giggle as he suddenly felt so many eyes on him.
Squall, you big stud,
Selfie winked at him.
This is all for you. Congratulations. Enjoy the show. Rinoa, don't let him get away.
Everyone laughed and clapped as Selfie put the mic down. Whatever.
Ready?
He heard her yell to the others without the mic.
A1, 2, 3.
The music they had chosen for the night was happy, upbeat, and exciting. Everyone cried out as they reached for the nearest person to pull them into a dance. All except Rinoa. She was content standing there with Squall, just appreciating the sound.
They're not bad, hey?
She asked over the music, smiling.
Yeah.
He agreed. Who knew that they could all play an instrument? Selfie he could see knowing, the others not so much. And was Quistis tapping?
What's with them?
Rinoa asked, pointing to a group near the stage. A group of guys and girls that were all practically melting right near where Quistis was performing.
That's her fan club,
Squall said.
Her what?
Rinoa drew back.
Quistis has a fan club. That's what I said,
he shrugged.
They seem happy though, so whatever.
Rinoa giggled.
They actually kind of look rabid. I had no idea Quistis was so popular.
As the music continued, Squall started pulling Rinoa away from the stage. He was only out here because she wanted to talk. They weren't going to be able to do that standing right in front of the stage with the rest of the garden dancing around them. He tugged on her hand gently and led her away. She didn't try to fight him. They worked their way around the stage and out of the sight of others. From this side, the sound of the music and the laughter died down slightly. At the edge of the platform above the bowl of solar panels, there was a magazine that had been flipped open a few pages by the wind. And a totally nude woman laid out along a divan with a red silk sheet covering absolutely nothing of importance was staring up at him. Squall quickly lifted his gaze, grumbling to himself. He had honestly thought Irvine had been kidding.
Ah, a naughty magazine,
Rinoa laughed, bending over it.
My, Squall. I find it interesting that I keep finding you around these things. You know that's Irvine's,
Squall said, annoyed. Rinoa laughed.
I'm joking. I'm joking. You wanted to talk about something, right?
Squall said pointedly, taking a seat on the rim of the platform. He deliberately closed the magazine and pushed it away.
What is it? Well, it's about your promotion.
Rinoa crouched down next to him.
Things are gonna get real tough for you, hey.
Squall deliberately looked away. He didn't want to think about it. Rinoa smiled at the side of his head.
Squall, I'm sure there'll be a lot of difficult things that you'll have to deal with from now on. We were talking about that and saying how you'll probably try to handle everything on your own.
Yeah, he probably would.
They know you too well,
Rinoa smiled.
I do too, although I haven't been around you that long. You know, when you start thinking too hard, you tend to frown like this.
Squall looked up slowly to find Rinoa looking up slowly, having mimicked his movement and even his position to AT. Squall reached out to grab her. Rinoa dropped back, rolled away, and came up neatly on her feet in a move that would have been impossible for her before she met Squall. He gave her a dull look and she had to hold her stomach as she laughed.
I'm out of here. Oh, come on.
Rinoa ran forward quickly to stop him from getting up.
I'm sorry. But, really, we were saying that. Well, you can't handle everything on your own.
Rinoa bit her lip as she pulled back her hands. Squall was staring off into the reflection of the stars in the solar panels. Rinoa pushed him suddenly and he had only enough time to get his feet under him instead of falling to his knees. Squall landed against the mirrored surface of one of the solar panels. He stumbled forward a few steps before turning back to see Rinoa jumping down after him. He growled at her angrily.
That's it.
Rinoa beamed at his annoyance.
Just let out anything. Anything.
Rinoa reached up and took hold of her necklace, trying to gather her courage. It was scary opening up to Squall just because he was so closed off. But she had to if she ever wanted to hope that he would do the same to her.
We want you to talk to us a little more. That's all.
Squall was staring at her, his expression unreadable. But she knew that face. That was the look he gave someone when they were saying something he didn't quite understand. She pressed forward, trying to explain herself.
You know, if there's anything you want to tell us, or anything we can do, don't hesitate to let us know. I know it's not easy, but I wish you would trust us and rely on us a little more.
Squall blinked because Rinoa looked sad when she said it. Was he that untrusting? He had to look away from her face then. Those eyes that threatened to drown them in their depths. He found himself instead looking up at the stars, up at the moon. Maybe he was that way because he was scared. Nothing lasts in this world. It feels great to have friends who believe in you and adults you can rely on. A girl with bright eyes that made your heart race and mind stop. It was wonderful. That's why it was so dangerous. Especially if you became used to it. Someday, you were bound to lose everything. Everyone around you would be gone. Then what were you left with? Nothing. Nobody. It's so miserable. And it's inevitable. It was so hard to recover from something like that. Squall never wanted to deal with that again. He couldn't. The pain of it would destroy him. And if that meant being alone, then...
What a night,
Rinoa sighed dreamily, capturing his attention again. He turned to see her walking in a slow circle around the solar panel, a smile on her face, her hands clasped behind her back. Each deliberate footstep clicked against the panel, her eyes turned from him.
Great music. Good-looking guy. Not only is he good-looking, he's the sweetest guy. A great listener. Right now, he's seriously thinking about what I said.
Rinoa smiled as she caught Squall staring at her with a raised eyebrow, but she just continued on.
He's shy. Doesn't say much. But I know him. I know that he would never dismiss me outright.
Rinoa finally stopped, her circle having brought her around to land right in front of him. Her eyes danced in the pale moonlight. His jacket was starting to slip from her shoulders slightly, but that only made her look better. Squall didn't realize until this moment, until he saw her wearing it so casually, that the jacket was more than just a way of keeping her warm. It was his mark on her. A claim. And that sent an electric shock of emotion up his spine that he didn't care to analyze too carefully.
So, what do you think?
Rinoa asked gently, raising an eyebrow.
None of our business.
Now even she was mocking him. He shook his head.
I appreciate your concern, but... No buts.
Rinoa held up her hand over his mouth, cutting him off. His eyes looked down at her hand, then back up to her eyes. When exactly had she become so comfortable touching him? And when had he become so comfortable allowing her to do so?
Just think about this,
Rinoa told him firmly.
This might be the only time we'll all be together. So, as long as we are together, we might as well enjoy each other's company and just talk, right?
Squall pulled his face out from under her hand as he made a face. Just for the moment. Then everything would be gone. And that moment would be meaningless.
Just for now, hey?
He asked angrily, taking her wrists to push her back.
Forget it. I don't want friends who won't be around tomorrow. Gosh, you're such a pessimist,
Rinoa grimaced then smiled. She turned her hands around and twisted her fingers with his.
There are no guarantees in the future. That's why today, the time we have now, is important. Squall, we want to help you, as much as we can, for as long as we can. We're not trying to leave, but we can't promise that we'll always be there either. Things happen. Circumstances change. And what we want isn't always what we get. Yeah, that's my point,
he grumbled, trying to pull his hands back, but she wouldn't let him.
We all love you, Squall,
she said firmly, surprising him. Her face was blazing red, but she didn't look away from him.
There, I said it. Please don't freak out. We just wanna live, you know. Live through this time with you. Together. Together.
He repeated softly. That sounded so good coming from her lips. She was breaking him again. Making him do things he normally wouldn't.
Keep it in the back of your mind,
Rinoa smiled, lowering their hands.
Call on us whenever you need to. We'll be waiting.
She released his hands and they felt suddenly colder, emptier without her. She smiled as she held her hands behind her back again. She shrugged.
Like I said, who knows what's gonna happen in the future? But, I have a feeling we'll be together for a while. That's what you want, right? Yeah.
The word fell from Squall's lips without him even realizing he had given it permission to do so. Rinoa smiled at hearing it as she turned to walk around the panel again.
So, what's on your mind?
She asked, stepping around the stars under her feet.
Do you have any dreams, Squall? Anything you want to do with your life?
Aside from seed? He had never really thought about it. He didn't even know if there was a good answer for it. He shrugged.
That's something I'd rather not talk about. What about you?
Rinoa thought for a moment before shrugging herself.
I don't know. I guess I'd rather not talk about the future, either. Right now. I just wanna stay right here. Like this.
She turned to smile at him and Squall looked back at her. He didn't exactly smile, but his face was as open as she had ever seen it.
What about you? What do you want right now?
Squall looked up at the stars, thinking. What he wanted right now. Rinoa. He wanted Rinoa. To hold her. To have her. To kiss her breathless. He closed his eyes and lowered his head back down. When they opened up again, Rinoa found her mouth falling open slightly at the swirling emotions she saw there. The strength of them, how they looked glowing in the darkness of the night, made her take in a staggered breath. Suddenly, her dress felt too thin. She could feel his eyes on her as he looked down her body, tracking the strip of creamy dress under his leather jacket. She turned to face him fully, biting her bottom lip. Because she wasn't at all opposed to giving him what his eyes said he wanted. She knew him though. He wasn't going to reach out to take it. So she had to come to him. Her heels were strangely loud as she moved closer. His eyes followed her, his expression almost hungry. Rinoa could feel the heat of his desire washing over her like waves on a shore. She stood just in front of him, their bodies almost touching, but not quite. The heat moved between them as Rinoa looked to his lips, then back up to his eyes. Slowly, like she was afraid she might startle him, she reached up and took his face in hand. He didn't pull away and she licked her lips in anticipation. She took another step closer, her foot moving between his thighs as she leaned up to close that distance that stretched out between them. Reaching out for him. Pulling him closer. Squall didn't resist her grasp. Her perfume was driving him mad. His fingers itched with the desire to reach out and just grab her. Yank her body against his and slam his mouth down on hers. He wanted to hear her moan as he ran his tongue over her lips. He wanted her body to squirm under his hands as he caressed the willowy curve of her hips and waist. The crowd cheered behind them as the song finished. The sounds were distant. It didn't touch either of them, lost as they were in their own world. So close. She was so close. Rinoa could feel the heat of breath. Nearly taste his lips. Her eyes were already closing in anticipation. How would he kiss? Would it be as devastating as his eyes promised? It would be as intense as he was, she was sure. Just as her mouth hovered over his hands caught her wrists. And he pushed her back. Hurt, Rinoa's eyes snapped open on him. Confused, rejected, and suddenly uncertain of herself, she searched his face for an explanation.
Not here,
he said, his voice low and growling with his own disappointment.
What's wrong with right here?
Rinoa whined.
For one thing, there's a large group of people right there just waiting for their new leader to give them something to gossip about. Let them talk, I don't care,
Rinoa pouted. Squall grinned at her.
For another thing, I don't want an audience.
He didn't want anyone else to see Rinoa like this. This was for him alone and he refused to share a moment that would be so special with a giggling group of cadets and seeds.
Who asked you to be so damn proper anyway?
Rinoa continued to pout but she stepped back away from him.
Okay, fine. I guess that's fair. Shall we go back to the concert then?
Squall nodded and held out his hand for her to take, anticipating it by now. She smiled and grabbed hold of him. Neither let go as they started making their way across the panels back to the concert. That night, Squall was plagued with nightmares and slept rather fitfully.
Sis? I'm all alone. But I'm doing my best. I'll be okay without you, sis. I'll be able to take care of myself.
The chiming of the intercom the next morning stirred Squall gently from slumber. His name being called officially by a voice he didn't recognize brought him out the rest of the way.
Squall. Squall, please report to the bridge immediately.
He groaned as he sat up. What was it now? It wasn't too early in the morning, Squall had slept in a bit. He hastily pulled on his clothes, Junction Shiva, and strapped on his gun blade before heading out. Up on deck, everything was completely different from when he had first pulled the machinery out of the bowels of the garden. Gone were the clunky, rusty old control systems with flickering green screens and a control knob that was hard to understand. In its place now, shining white and gold, there was a new platform built over the old one. Spearing up from underground, like an enormous joystick, a gold filigree emblazoned pillar stood proud. Quistis was standing on the left of the platform, Sue to the right. And Nita, of all people, was standing in front of the pillar in full uniform and a smile on his face. As Squall's head appeared over the edge of the platform, all three of them started applauding.
Greetings, Commander,
Quistis beamed at him. Squall's eye twitched.
Don't call me that.
Sue smiled at his reaction.
We thought you should have a title. So Quistis and I decided on Commander. We figured it was fitting. Sorry to carry things out on our own, but Sue and I have assigned duties,
Quistis said. Sue picked up.
I'll take care of all the supplies needed in the garden. And I'll help take care of the students with Drive Katawaki. Sue will deal with the administration. And Quistis will deal with education. That leaves you to focus on our destination and battle plans. Should be more than enough for your plate. If either of us need your input, we'll come to you immediately.
Squall nodded, accepting the actions as the most logical and efficient.
Oh, and,
Quistis grimaced.
Will you let Selfie rest a while? I think she's exhausted from the missile base mission and the concert. She could use some time off. Is that all right, Commander?
Fine, Squall nodded, already fed up with being called Commander.
All right,
Sue clapped her hands together.
I have some reports for you already. Nita. Hey, Commander.
He nodded formally.
Stop it. So, I'm glad to officially report that the FH technicians finished fixing the garden last night. And, as of this morning, everything is back in place and the garden is ready to go anytime. Oh, yeah, and I'll be piloting the garden. The FH technicians taught me everything about controlling this thing. Let me know where we're going. Any suggestions?
Quistis asked.
Why don't we go back to Balam?
Sue asked immediately.
We don't know what's happened since we left. Besides, Balam may be their next target. It's a harbor town, just like FH, and they'll know by now that we aren't there to protect the town any longer. You're right,
Quistis frowned.
Squall, what do you think?
He nodded and turned to Nita.
Set course back to Balam. Announce the departure. Roger, Commander.
Nita turned and pulled down from the ceiling the mic for the intercom system. When had the techs put it up there?
Preparing takeoff procedures.
The intercom dinged and Nita spoke officially through the speakers and Squall recognized the voice that had woken him up.
May I have your attention please? This is the bridge.
Rinoa looked up from the desk. She was reading it in the library.
The garden will be leaving FH soon. Please prepare for departure. I will now hand the mic over to our leader, Squall.
Rinoa made a face as she heard Squall suddenly talking not quite into the mic.
A speech? Forget it.
She started laughing as she heard what sounded like Squall hitting the speaker.
Cut the mic.
She wasn't the only one laughing good-naturedly as the intercom dinged again. Their leader wasn't exactly personable, but no one seemed to mind. While he wasn't overly friendly, no one could doubt his capabilities. And Seed always appreciated function over form. End of chapter.